Welcome. It is no accident that you have found your way to the Release the Genie podcast. What would you do with 3 wishes? And what if you discovered that you are in fact that very genie that could grant them? Well, join us now as we discover who our next genie is as we listen in and learn the stories of triumph, inspiration, and passion with some very special guests. And now, without further delay, your host of the Release the Genie podcast, Mr. Paul Rogers.
That's so much better. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're tuning in from. I am your host, Paul Rogers, and welcome to another episode of Release the Genie. So forgive my horrible background, people. Hey, technology is a beautiful thing when it works. But hey, you didn't come here to look at my pretty background. You came here to hear today's special genie, Jason Holzer. Now, let me tell you a few things about this incredible man. He's the co-founder of 4D Athletics. He'll be able to go into a little bit more about that. He's an Amazon best-selling author with his book, Shattered by Suicide, Renewed by Resilience. He also finds time in being all those superstar things to be a mental and phys ed teacher. And finally, his big focus and passion is the mental prosperity and wellness. So welcome, my newest genie, Jason. How are you doing?
Paul, man, hey, thank you for having me on. And some people get a little confused with 4D athletics, and it's actually we talk about 4D athletes. I just want to make sure everybody got that 4D athletes. And athletes, very similar. But yeah, thank you for having me on today, man.
The pleasure is mine, and I got a chance to talk with you recently, so I'm very excited to share you with everyone else. So let's dive in. Tell us a little bit more about yourself. I've kind of set the scene, so let me know a little bit more about you.
Yeah. I grew up in a really small town in the middle of Missouri called Taos, Missouri. And from the day I can remember, though, I've always loved playing sports. Like that was if you had one thing that you felt like you could do for 5 hours, but it felt like 5 minutes, for me, that was throwing a ball or shooting or, you name it, like out there playing. And so, needless to say, it's kind of cool how I'm a PE teacher now. Now I teach the games, right? And then I've been coaching basketball for a while. So that's like kind of my passion side, like the things I really love to do. And then, based on my book, my biggest pain in life is losing my dad to suicide. And that's kind of what my passion was for writing the book, was for people to understand like what a loss survivor goes through when you lose somebody to suicide. And not that I said that I have all the answers, but I just want to give people a firsthand, like walk in my shoes experience by reading my book of like, this is what happens when a 17-year-old boy, kind of some of the things they go through. But then I showed like people what I did specifically to help me move forward after feeling left behind and all the feelings that go with that.
With And I can see where that inspiration, you're obviously a sports person, but being able to work that passion into with suicide prevention, mental health, and being able to use that as an education tool as well, because you're not just a phys ed coach, you're actually able to teach people games and the life lessons that come with sportsmanship and sport.
Yeah. There's so many lessons that we can learn, through sports and games. You name it. Like the ability to be resilient. Whenever things don't go your way, right? Like whenever the ball doesn't bounce your way, or maybe it was a tough loss, or maybe it was something that you really, really wanted, but you fell just a little bit short. And teamwork, communications, understanding your emotions, all these kind of things. And there's a plethora more, building confidence in yourself that we can teach. And as a byproduct of that, also helps with mental health. So that's the key for us is like, what can we use with sports to also teach the things that are going to matter to them 10 years, 15, 20, 25, 30 years, rest of their life. in a fun and in a way that a lot of people enjoy as well. A lot of people relate to sports too.
Sports is such a good arena because we all have a favorite sport, and the analogies we can do, because it's a combat arena. It's like the modern gladiator arena, and the life lessons. I always remember my favorite teacher. Do you have a favorite teacher you can remember the name of?
Yeah, man, I do. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of hoping that, and I know, and not hope about it, that Jason's name will be the one which will be said in years to come, because that sounds awesome. So take me through one of your big aha release the genie moments, if you could.
Yeah, it was actually at my wedding. When I married a wonderful woman, and it was an aha moment that, my dad's going to be gone in every big moment of my life, and I realized that at graduation, whenever I graduated college and high school and that kind of thing. But then that was the biggest moment where I realized, like, every big moment for me is going to be bittersweet. It's going to be super exciting, but it's also going to be super, it's going to be sad too, and being able to be proactive in how I handle those big moments in life was a big aha moment for me. And what steps am I going to put in place to be okay and be excited in those big moments, even though knowing that, Dad is not physically here to enjoy them with me.
A very big and heartfelt lesson. I really like at the end there that he said not physically here, because I'm pretty sure from what you've been saying and the work you're doing, he's going to be sat there being very proud of you and the way you're helping others. So a wonderful, bittersweet, but you can use that to help other people to embrace their bittersweet moments. So very powerful, my friend. And yeah, I honor that for you. So that's wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you. And, Paul, one thing I've learned through all this is empathy for others, and trying to see, like, their perspective of maybe, if somebody comes in to me and they have an angry voice, or, like, they're pissed off, like, try not to take it personally, like, like, I wonder what they're going through right now, because we tend to be very reactive, most of us, and me too sometimes as well. But going through what I've gone through has helped me empathize more and helped me get more curious about what happened or what went wrong that they feel like that this is the only way that they know how to respond,
Yeah.
And when you can come to a place of curiosity and empathy, it helps quiet the anger inside of you as well.
And it's taking the creativity and the curiosity from childlike, but actually then applying it to everything. And I totally agree with the react versus respond. And there's that moment where people get dragged around by whatever they see in front of them. So very sagely advice here. Wow. To meet someone who says that and actually that's what they teach us is amazing. So thank you for that.
Yeah, sure.
Let's go on then, because this would be quite interesting. What would you say is one of your, because I'm sure you've got plenty, what was one of your favorite quotes that springs to mind, or a mantra that you live by?
Yeah, I like to live by the mantra of every day in every way I get better, better, and better. Like feeding that growth mindset, because it's never going to be perfect, if you will, our perception of perfect, but I can choose to get better. Like a tree naturally grows in the forest, or, things that we are naturally meant to grow. And if you can learn to use every situation as a growth opportunity, positive or negative, and find the positives in every situation, you're just going to get better. And so that's my mantra of, like, every day I say, hey, every day in every way I'm going to get better, better, and better.
I love it. Very, very empowering. And one of those ones you can say every single day, and really actually feel it. Don't just recite the words, but actually really get into that feeling.
Yeah. And some days you're gonna improve more than others, but knowing like, hey, how did I get better today? Oh, I read 10 minutes. And so it doesn't have to be like this incremental. It's like compound interest, right? Maybe 1%. Like what action can you take to improve just maybe one element of your life? Like for example, I learned about drinking water with Himalayan salt and lemon. I'm like, oh, okay, that's simple. I can do that every day. And just the benefits of like mastering one thing before you move on to the next thing. Like for me, it's always like, what's the one thing I can improve physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, environmentally. And so right now I'm getting the habit of drinking lemon and Himalayan water whenever I wake up in the morning.
That's amazing. And I love how it always comes back to nature, because even the trees that fall in a forest, you can see that they don't give up at that point. You see these new shoots regardless of wherever they lay, because there would have to at one stage be a breaking moment. Being in tune with our environment rather than being out of sorts with our environment.
Yeah. I think it's whenever you learn how the nature around you evolves, and you're like, well, what if I kind of did a similar path myself? And then a flower doesn't look at the other flower like, oh, it's bigger than me. It just continues to grow, right? Like nature doesn't compare itself, right? I mean, and so we get in the habit of comparing ourselves, like, oh, this person has this or this person, especially social media, right? Like you can easily get caught in a comparison trap. But when you're focused on your own growth and like you look back and see how far you've came, like, wow, I'm proud of myself, like that kind of thing. And you feel so much more positive than trying to compare yourself to somebody else. Because number one, you don't know their story. And number two, people can spin ways in so many different angles to make it look a certain way, almost like putting the lipstick on a pig, right? But it's still a pig. So
I always love that one. It always makes me laugh because I have that vision. But no, you're right. The people hold themselves prisoner by doing that, and it's almost like needing external validation for where you are on your journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they forget to listen. Like we have an intuition, we have a GPS inside of us that will guide us. But so many of us, we listen to the outside noise that it silences that internal guide that we all have. Because we think, oh, they said I should do this, they said I should do that. Well, I mean, what do you think you should do? And most people are like, I don't know. You tell me. Like we don't live our own journey because we're so worried about like fulfilling other people's journeys or their thoughts of what our journey should be, right? I mean, and that's kind of one thing is like learn to listen to that internal guide in yourself, and that's like a muscle. The more you practice it, the easier it is to hear it.
Absolutely, and people talk about sort of the internal chatter, but there's a lot of good in there, but they tend to sort of like focus on the most sensational stuff, like, so I love the fact that you're turning it back around and flipping it on its head, which is, I think, one of the big skills. And that's why I'm so excited that you're with the next generations to help them think like that before they even have come out the gate.
And you gotta learn to be okay with being still and being in a quiet place. Like most people, like they can't live like in a quiet place with themselves. You tell sit in a quiet spot for 10 minutes by yourself. That'll freak most people out, like being in their own thoughts, because they haven't learned how to, quiet the obnoxious teenager in the mind and listen to the wise sage in their mind. Right? They haven't learned that. And one is just running rampant in their head. The other one, they've tuned out. And that's the one they need to be listening to the most, Yeah.
I think it was Pythagoras that said that most of man's problems is the inability to sit quietly in a room by himself.
Mm-hmm.
So Yeah, it's it's been around for a little while, that type of not going with that. So wow. Well, look, we'll move on, but this is great, and this is a whole different podcast here. Love it. Take us back to a time where it wasn't so rosy, wasn't so good, and if you've got a setback or something you've had to overcome, if you could share it with us.
Yeah, man. I mean, where do I start? I see setbacks as now I see them as opportunities, right? So as I look back and over even before I lost my dad to suicide, I went through a pretty traumatic experience of bullying whenever I was 12 years old. Like I lost my self-image, lost my self-confidence because I was so worried about what other people thought. Mm. I was so worried about like fitting in, right? And you're teenagers, right? It's natural. You want to try to find your tribe, right? You want to try to find and so, for me, that was from like 12 to 15. It took a while for me to figure out who I was. And then when I did that, bam, I lost my dad to suicide. And I was like, dang, so, and from with that, I dealt with, resentment, shame, like blame as well. Like, was it me? Why? All of these kind of negative emotions that I chose. Also, my ego told me like I could handle myself and I didn't need help. And so I held myself back a lot of the way because I realized that as I got older, you're not supposed to do this alone. And so it's okay to talk about the things that are going on in your life because more than likely somebody's going through a very similar experience.
People are, and that's one of the big problems, especially in mental health. The wide issues is the whole feeling of being alone, and mental health and physical pain is a very lonely journey to be on. So to know that there's people who've been through it and have come out the other end.
Mm-hmm. And for me, it was 2003 when I lost my dad to suicide. So it was, it's still taboo a little bit to talk about it, but 18 years ago, it was very taboo to talk about it. You swept it under the rug, you didn't mention it, that kind of thing. There wasn't as many resources, 18 years ago as well. There wasn't the social media aspect, there wasn't the awareness aspect of it. And most people thought like, oh, that happens to other people. Like that doesn't happen to us. Yeah. So when it does happen to you, you're like, didn't see that coming.
And the fact is that you've been able, and that's the title of your book's Renewed by Resilience, which we'll get into. But that it's a two-part equation you've got there, and I really love you got the initial, and let's just put that up on the screen there so people can see that. Let's see. Oh, I didn't put it on, and it didn't come up. My bad, but it's
okay.
But Shattered by Suicide, that's an event, and then Renewed by Resilience. That's an empowering move, isn't it?
Yeah, and a lot of people see resilience as like, oh, you just toughen up, right? But I see it differently. And one of the best definitions I've heard of resilience is the ability to seek positive outcomes spiritually, mentally, physically, emotionally, despite adversity or trauma.
Resilience is kind of like a buzzword at the moment.
It is. It can be cliche or it can be like,
But I think true resilience, that's a different thing altogether. We sometimes the word love can be thrown around, but actually true love, that's a very different type of pure emotion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I even say like authentic resiliency, which includes like vulnerability, things like that, like your courage, and all those things that involved like resiliency isn't just like putting your nose to the ground and just pushing forward. That's force, right? Mm-hmm. And force creates tension in most, and that could be a good thing, bad thing, who knows? But for me, vulnerability and courage equal transformation, and I think that's the essence of resiliency.
Yeah. No, I love it. Very great explanation there. Thank you. I'm pretty sure everyone got a lot out of just that little section. So fantastic. Thank you so much. So before we move into the second part of our show, I just want to ask you, do you have a hero? And that could be live, dead, fictional, or non-fictional.
Yeah, I mean, I would say my hero is my mother. She has had to be resilient in her entire life. She lost her parents at a very young age, and she lost her husband with 3 kids. Like, I was 17, my sisters were 15 and 8. So they were very young, and so, but through it all, she was the ultimate example of sacrifice. And we take things one day at a time. We'll make it through. We had our tough moments, no question about it, but we stuck together. And so just her example of trying to, like, we don't have to have everything figured out. We just have today have this moment figured out. We just got to figure out how to get through this moment. So I would say in a lot of ways, just the example of never giving up and just being resilient in that aspect. I'd say, a great example of that would be my mother.
Awesome. Great explanation. And I can well see, where would we be if we weren't for our mums? I mean,
wouldn't be here, that's for sure, right?
Well, there is that very important piece to start with. So, what are you working on at the moment? I know you're sort of just about to finish the summer camp part. So what are you working on at the moment?
Yeah, school year is getting ready to start. But also, a lot of my focus is going towards building our conscious business of 4D athletes and using sports to teach life skills, transform lives, and be a positive influence. And the reason why, Paul, is because right now, the second leading cause of death between 10 to 34-year-olds is suicide. One in 3 adolescents experience anxiety on a daily basis. The pandemic has really put us and not just from the actual virus itself, but a mental standpoint of fear, nervousness, you're afraid, that kind of thing. And so I think it's important for us right now, more than ever so, is to focus on the life skills, teaching the mental health piece of it. And by life skills, I don't mean like being able to fill out a resume, or I mean like grit, resilience, confidence, resilience, those kind of things, managing your emotions, understanding how your mind works, all those, and developing great habits. Those are the life skills that I'm talking about, that no matter what you do, if you learn those skills, you'll be successful in anything you do. Sports, life, school, career, husband, wife, you name it, father figure, whatever it is, you're going to be great at that.
It's so, and they are the higher functioning skills, which people expect us to come out of school and know how to deal with everything, but we don't. And so I think, as I said, I'm a big fan of that type of lessons, which I have seen as an employer, as somebody who's now an old fart, looking at down, is that people need to learn those type of things. So not too old fart before you start posting. So let's move to the second part of the show, which is the 3 wishes I'm going to ask from you. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it. Yes.
Okay. Wish number 1. What is the best advice you've received in your life?
It's a quote from Babe Ruth, and it says, "If you can't lose if you never give up."
Yep.
And so, like, for me, it's like, well, I'm undefeated every day. I can't lose if I never give up. So I think that is one thing. Like, if I could encourage other people, sometimes you may not be able to physically see the work, the benefits that you're doing, but that doesn't mean it's not happening, right? So, stick with it if you truly believe in what you're doing, if it helps other people. And it only becomes a matter of when.
I love it. And yes, again, I can see both of the sports analogy and the business, the mental and
anything, you name it. Yeah.
Love it. Love it, guys. I hope you're writing this down because this is good, or rewatch it. It's really good. So you're 1 for 1 at the moment doing a sports analogy. So let's see how you do with the second one, which is, what advice would you give to your younger self?
You know, from if I had to go through again what I went through, I would say, give life a chance to get better, because it will. Like, you're gonna go, like, growing up, you're gonna go through some very uncomfortable things, and no matter if you experience trauma or not, like, there's just the reality of it. So just give life a chance to get better, and if you believe life will get better, it will.
We've talked about belief a couple of times, and I think that really is the sort of the big thing to keep hold of. Would you agree with that? That sort of gives you your direction.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say is, like, have a growth mindset. Like, always be a lifelong learner. There's always something to get better at. So that's what I would tell myself. Yeah.
Love it. Great advice. Well, look, you're 2 for 2 now. Let's see if we can get the hat trick going here. So the hat trick question is, could you share one habit that attributes to your success?
Thinking positively, and not just thinking positively, but I always tell myself, like, I always ask myself this question: why is this working in my favor? Or why is this working for me? No matter what it is, whether we, as a coach, whether you lose a game on a last second shot, or, maybe with 40 athletes, we have thinking like, oh, we got this team, and they like, well, we need some time. We need a little bit more time to think about it, before we commit. All right. Okay. And you can get discouraged with some of that kind of stuff, and I sit in it for like a minute, but then immediately after a minute, I'm like, why is this working in my favor? And I start looking for the reasons why this is going to work out in my benefit a month from now, 2 months from now. So I kind of having like that future hindsight, right? Like looking ahead and then thinking back at this moment, like, oh, that's why that had to happen. Okay.
I love that, because it's a you set up almost like a trigger behavior that when you get to that point, you then shift your gaze to actually how that could possibly help you on your journey. I love that. That's really good.
Well, because you think about it too, like a lot of times in the present, we'll look back at things that happened in our life. Like, oh, well, if that didn't happen, then this wouldn't happen, and this wouldn't happen. And the cool thing is, with our imaginations in our mind, you could throw yourself in the future 6 months from now, see yourself as successful, and then bring yourself back to the present. Like, oh, okay, so this is why this had to happen for me to get here 6 months from now.
Love it. Great advice. And all of it is across the board. I think we can safely say you've got your hat trick there. So that's a very clean, easy one to go with.
Hey, that's my first ever hat trick, Paul, because I grew up in mid-Missouri. We didn't play soccer. We didn't play hockey whenever I was growing up. So, it's exciting that I finally got my first hat trick.
Well, it had to happen sometime. Taking your logic, it had to happen sometime. So this is where it came through.
Ted Lasso would be proud of me, man.
Let's just say this is the start of many to come. So, so tell us, I think I know what you're going to say already, but what book would you like to recommend to the listeners?
Man, there's so many out there. And the one that I would recommend right now is it's called PQ, Positive Intelligence, by Shirzad Chamine. And that book really like helps you understand what are the things, like how your mind is your greatest enemy, but it can also be your greatest ally.
Yep.
And depending on how you're swaying, that's kind of like creating your reality. Like mentality creates your reality. And I've learned so much in like the last 6 weeks, just diving deep into the voices in your mind and which ones to listen to and which ones to label, observe, and let go.
The judges and the sages.
Yes. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, no, great book. And there's also a course. I've been on the course as well. It's a really good one. It's an app and everything. So
Yeah,
if you
and
haven't done
I'm actually doing the app, the 6-week course right now. So I'm like on week innovate, the week of innovation. So like week 6, I believe it is.
it's a really good thing. I thoroughly enjoyed it. So good call. Oh my God, we're so similar. I so look, where can we find you finally? Where do you hang out?
Yeah, our website is 4dathletes.com. You can also find us at LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn, as well as Instagram is J Holzer or at 40 athletes. And Facebook, you can search up my name, and if you Google 4D athletes, you will find it. Like number 4, letter D, athletes, will come up.
Awesome. Well, look, wow, what a session! It's gone so fast, but so much real good, dense, as in really value dense stuff. I'm going to try and sum up. This is going to be a task.
Yeah.
First hat trick, thank you, first of all. And, being able to actually realize that every day is not going to be a touchdown, but there are days you just have to go a little bit up the field, but realize that that is always in your locker if you need it, but doing the work, there is no shortcuts. It has to be the work.
Yeah. And one of my favorite quotes is as well as inch by inch, life's a cinch, yard by yard, life's hard, right? So what's the little thing you can do today to build that momentum, right? And so that's kind of why I like that as a reminder too.
Brilliant. I can see everything sports analogies, and I love it. Well, look, Jason, thank you very much for taking time out to come and talk with us all. Great to actually have met you. Really nice guy as well. So good luck with the coming school term. And we will see everyone on our next Release the Genie. And until then, think resilience. Think going inch by inch instead of yard by yard. And we'll see you on the next show. Thank you very much. And goodbye for now.
Well, that's a wrap. You have been listening to yet another episode of the Release the Genie podcast with host Paul Rogers. Be sure to follow Paul on the LinkedIn platform and learn more of Paul's resources at www.takeactionacademy.ca. And until next time, as always, be mindful and be sure to release your genie. Thanks for listening.